Howdy, folks. Anthony Dream Johnson here, founder of 21 Studios, with another episode of Gender Wars. Today in studio at 21 Studios in Orlando, Florida, I have the one and only Elliot Hulse, CEO of Strength Camp, and here from Tampa, or St. Pete. Thanks for coming out, man.
My pleasure. Love to be here.
Yeah.
Love what you're doing.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man.
Love what you're doing, too, and love having you involved.
Yep.
You know, I met you earlier this year, but maybe a month and a half ago now or something like that. And I didn't know what to make of you or what to expect going in. And I've been really impressed, man. From just hanging out, shark fishing, shooting guns, filming, podcasts and stuff. I've been really impressed, man. After following your work for many years on YouTube with Strength Camp and all that.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have you. It's more than nice to have you involved. It's fucking badass.
Yeah. Perfect timing also too.
Yeah.
And depending on when you would have met me, your opinion may have been different. Because there are lots of different, right, of course. I guess we're all evolving,
Yeah.
And so it's perfect timing for us to get together in this particular way because the work that you're doing has, just this year really, has started becoming really important to me.
Yeah.
I've gone, being a pro strongman, strength coach, all the things that I've done led me to a place in life where I needed to back off a little bit.
Yeah.
And have some regrouping time. And then as that moment for reemerging came about, I started to notice a trend in a lot of the young men that were following me. The questions that they were sending had a lot to do with MGTOW and red pill and no FAP. And these were things that I had never even really heard of prior to
MGTOW, red pill, no FAP.
Yeah. I mean, all I spoke about up until that point was, lifting, being strong, being healthy. I answered questions that were related to relationships and stuff like that, just based on my experience. But I haven't dated since I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of new.
You
I
married
should
your
look to you guys, to gather some input so I could support my fans.
And you married your high school sweetheart, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Man, that's a hell of a story, man. That's something that seemed, I think, common a while ago, and you don't hear that very often. Hunter Drew, a friend of ours, is someone who's done that too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's good having you in the studio, man. I wanted to talk today about Patriarchy and the upcoming event we have, which, as you know, is the first ever event we've done focused on fatherhood and patriarchy and marriage and family. And I think, as we've talked about too privately, I started this company 12 years ago, and it was a company focused on young men. It was literally called the Under 21 Convention. So seeing it come of age now, bringing in speakers like you who are older, and you have this huge YouTube channel, and then we're talking about fatherhood and family and all these very mature topics. It's a big change since the founding. But for me, like we talked about too, it's an evolution. It's very natural, and I'm excited to have fathers like you speak, patriarchs, because you said too on our shark fishing trip we went on a few weeks ago. You said something important, that anybody can be a parent or a father. You just go out, you get laid, you have sex, a chick gets knocked up, you pop out a baby. But that doesn't make you a strong father. It doesn't make you a patriarch. It doesn't make you a leader. Those are things you have to do. And I think you've done a good job on your channel with Strength Camp, teaching men how to be strong in very specific physical ways and mental ways too, that are very tied in. So let me ask you this question. What do you think the relation is between fatherhood and physical strength? How does that play? Why is it important, if it's important? And how does that affect your family? How does it affect your children over time?
One of my favorite quotes from Ralph Waldo Emerson is, what you are speaks so loud that the world can't hear a word you're saying.
Damn.
Yeah. So, we could spend all of our time. We live in a day and age where talking is the currency. Everybody speaks. Everybody has an idea. Really what everybody's doing is regurgitating, because information is so plentiful that they just take it in and spit it back out. What really moves someone's soul, and I'm talking about, father and his family, because that's really what we are, is who you're being. And if you're being weak, also I like to say your body is your mind. If you look weak, you're reflecting a weakness of character. If you're unhealthy, you're weak. So bodily vigor, bodily fitness, bodily strength is a reflection of the soul.
And you say, I'm imagining you would say too, it's an expression of who you are, right?
Yeah, your essence.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I recently started reading a lot of Christian Orthodox books.
Okay.
I've been into all kinds of different religion and stuff. I love this stuff. Christianity I put aside for a little while, and then recently it's just kind of popped back up in my heart. but particularly Eastern Orthodox, because of what I've discovered, the way they embody Christianity rather than just talking about it.
Yeah.
And one of the fathers, one of the patriarchs, they call their leaders patriarchs. I love it.
That's awesome.
They write these there's an old text where they would give their wisdom, and a lot of their work revolves around the fact that we cannot separate the physical manifestation and experience of a human being from the spiritual. A lot of the Catholic and then Protestant religions, or branches of Christianity, separate the two and almost denigrate the body.
Yeah.
Right, and forget that the body is divine as well.
Well, let's change topics to this a little bit. So, why isn't fatherhood valued today the same way it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago? We're talking about an old religion here, Eastern Orthodox, Christianity, but let's focus on America. Like, why has that changed?
A big part of it is what we would call women's suffrage or progress for women, which has brought women into the workforce, which takes them out of the home, but then also reduces the necessity to have a provider, to have a man. And so the whole idea that I don't need no man didn't exist before that. It's like, no, you needed a man. So, I guess you could call it like the economic liberation of women, which I'm not against. These aren't, bad things. But when you ask the question, why aren't fathers as important? Yeah. Well, you've got that. And then you also have a government that
it's playing daddy.
Will give prizes to women who don't have the father in the home. So like the welfare state is dependent on having a woman with only her children, dependent on the state. If the man is there, they don't get those free stuff and those prizes. So those are just some of the most obvious reasons why.
Something comes to mind too, based on what you said. I agree with you that it's not a bad thing for women to have the option, and then sometimes make that option to make a choice and have a career, build a career, or even something similar to that, start a business or whatever. But I think what you're getting at, because people will see that and I think they'll try to attack you for that.
Right.
But what I see is like choices have consequences. And that is what I think was lost in the sauce over the past 50, 60, 70, 80 years in this country, with women, going out in the workforce, leaving the home, and not thinking about, for example, like getting taxed on that money. Whereas women used to stay home and, of course, not get taxed on being a housewife, being a mother, doing all those chores around the house that otherwise you have to spend money on. And they go out, of course, and get taxed, and then contribute to the tax base and all that. All sorts of conspiracy theories for that shit too. But the basic facts are, things are changing. And Hunter Drew is actually going to give a talk, I think, at some point at our conference, that choices have consequences.
Right.
That's going to be the whole title of it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing, or I'm not judging it, but like you say, there are consequences. Yeah. And if you look at those who benefit most from those consequences, it's a lot of the corporations and government, our rulers. They're the ones who benefit by more taxes, more customers, and more children that are not guided by their family and family values, but more now by the state and the media. So it's really it's a control issue. It's usurping power from the home, turning more human beings into batteries for the state, and hypnotizing the family to be better consumers and followers.
Yeah. The government's also a useful tool for feminists and that kind of those ideas to break up the family.
Right.
No fault divorce laws and women getting 98% of alimony and all these crazy things. You've seen even now you look at billionaires getting hosed. Jeff Bezos and all these other guys. Brad Pitt got divorce raped. All this stuff. It's crazy, and that's all enabled by government. Speaking of government, so you recently, came out as a pro-Trump supporter, at least as far as I've been able to tell on social media. That's caused a lot of ruckus, obviously, and that's been actually really interesting to follow. What do you think Trump's effect on fatherhood is in this country currently, over the past couple of years and now? And how do you see that? How do you see his influence in the country affecting fatherhood going forward, and the issues surrounding it? Family and stuff like that.
Well, it's interesting. I grew up with a great father. He was there, but he was a strict father, and I resented
Sounds like
him.
A good father.
Yeah, right. Well, growing up in the secularized liberal America as it was becoming, in the 80s through the 60s and into the 80s, and I grew up in the 80s and 90s. The children are now still, I struggle with my children, encouraged to resist, the strict parents or boundaries in general, particularly from the home.
Yeah.
So I received a lot of my instruction from media and school, which is very feminized and doesn't want the father to be strong. My dad grew up in the jungle. He grew up in Belize, and he's just based on instinct. I don't think my dad learned how to be an alpha. He just had no choice because he was from the jungle.
Yeah.
So I resisted him. He was really tough. I'm grateful now as an adult. I started to recognize his value as a strict conservative father when I became maybe around 27.
Okay.
27, 28, when I started reaching my 30s. And then I started counting.
Is there a reason for that, or it just kind of happened that way?
Well, by then I had 3 daughters. And,
okay.
So my life was well underway. So I got to understand why he was that way.
Got it.
With that, I began to count the ways that his being conservative and being strict were valuable. And when I see Donald Trump behaving the way he is, saying the things he says, doing the things he does, I'm like, that's my dad. And those are the great things that I hated about my dad, but it took a certain amount of maturity for me to accept. So, now that I see everybody resisting Donald, Donald.
#resist. Yeah.
Right, they just resist him, they hate him, they fight him. I realize how much our culture has turned into whiny teenage brats instead of grown, conservative, strong men. And so it's interesting for me to watch, particularly men. Like, a lot of my followers are strong men, like they lift for a living. Like that's what they do. But to see them be whiny liberal brats in the face of a strong man is a little daunting.
Yeah, it's interesting too. There's a lot of ways you can analyze politics in this country the past couple of years and right now, and Trump. But I think emotional maturity and people responding to it negatively because they're lacking that maturity, that's pretty interesting. And it's not something you see talked about much. People just want to blame, Orange Man bad, and, #resist because whatever fucking reason. So yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I do see the parallels you're saying. Yeah,
right.
Your father,
They're very emotional about it too.
Yeah.
And I remember that when being a kid, like it was an emotional anger towards my
lashing
dad.
out.
Right. They're not logical about it, which is a red flag that there's something wrong. They call names, they judge.
I mean, I'm thinking now. What's popping in my head is on the inauguration day, that yellow vest. I think it was a girl. I don't actually know. It was a girl or guy. She was like screaming. She was like, "No!"
Right.
And like it's recorded in history now. Like that like made the day. But it's I think that's just a small expression though of what you're saying or what you're focusing, which is a lot of people are doing that. Men and women both too, or male. We'll call them males, I guess. Yeah.
You got to be careful.
Yeah, to be careful. Yeah, I don't call them men.
Yep.
Let's bump off a little bit that a little bit. How has your philosophy changed in the past, say, year and a half, since you got a little bit more interested in MGTOW stuff, the red pill, the manosphere? I'm not involved in MGTOW much myself or anything, but obviously it's part of the manosphere. So since finding Rollo's work, since finding 21 Convention, since finding the Red Man Group, how's it influenced you? Positively, negatively, new ideas?
In a myriad of different ways. First of all, big shout out to Rollo. Like I was reflecting on his books and their impact on my, my new ways of thinking, you would say, since last April or May. And, although my life is great, my life is amazing, I wouldn't change a single thing about it. I made a lot of the decisions that I made to get to where I am in a very unconscious way. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just following my instinct, following my gut, following the pattern. You know, if I look at my life and I look at my father's life, that's, you know, part of the reason why it's good to have a strong father as a pattern. I didn't have to make too many decisions. I was being what my father was.
Set an example was.
Set an example was. So my life turned out well, you know, just like his. But being able to look back with red pill lenses, particularly as it related to the way I thought of and dealt with women, and the way I thought of and dealt with my wife, and how we ended up being together since we were 14 years old and marrying her. If I read Rollo's book when I was 17, I probably wouldn't still be with my wife.
Holy shit.
And that doesn't mean that, you know, like I said, I love her.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what I was doing. One of the things that really struck me this year was my ability to look at my life objectively and see how sex at a young age put me on this path. Not to say that it's a wrong path, but I could see how it could lead so many young men on the wrong path, you know.
It's a powerful motivator.
Right. I was blinded because I was having sex. I think that's one of the biggest paradigm shifts for me, and opinion changes that a lot of people are confused about, where I say, you know, I tell my children having sex before marriage is not a great idea. Even though Rollo talks about, you know, plate spinning and stuff. And I'm like, I'm okay. I'm cool with that. I understand it. But just from my experience and my wisdom and what I can see, I have to assert that promiscuity is not a good idea, particularly if you're unaware of the nature of this intersexual dynamics between men and women. We think we're in love a lot of times. And I see these guys, you know, head over heels, they're bawling, they're tore up. And because it's emotional, tells me right away. Like if you're attached to a woman emotionally, you don't really love her. You're attached to her sex. Sex is physical. Emotion is physical. To really love a woman is logical. I've learned that I love my wife more now because I've been able to separate sex/emotion from the relationship.
And all the chemical responses you're getting from that.
Right. And the jealousy and the anger. I remember being like jealous and angry. I was very emotional, you know, when I was a teenager with her. Yeah. And throughout. And I carried that into adulthood, but in a suppressed and unconscious way. I didn't know. Okay. And it wasn't until I separated sex and emotion, which is all very physical, they're together, from consciously loving my wife. I think for a man to love a woman, he has to know that he doesn't need her sex. Otherwise, it's an addiction. Yeah. It's an emotional, physical addiction. So that has been wonderful. It's been great to be able to separate those two and to know that I love my wife logically.
Beyond just the feeling.
Beyond needing her for the sex. Because if that's the case, they'll always have you by the balls. Yeah.
And breathe from your balls.
Oh, yeah. Breathe down into them and grab them, baby. You got to own them.
Yep. So let's shift gears again here a little bit. It's be kind of a Yo Elliott kind of question. If a father of a family is in trouble, who should he turn to?
The father.
You mean like God?
Yep. Okay. So our ancestors understood that men always needed a pattern. Men are like a clean slate. And if we're not given a path or given a pattern, which is where the word paternity comes from and patriarch, then we can be easily inscripted upon. And so it's either going to be we take on the nature of our mother, or we take on the nature of the popular culture at large, both of which would either be emotional or the popular culture leads you astray. Yeah. And so a father is, for someone with a good father, which is my prayer and hope for every young man moving forward in this new patriarchy. Yeah. You turn to your father. What would my father do? But our fathers, even if they were there, are flawed. As much as I love my dad, and my dad did a great job, and I wouldn't trade him for the world. He's messed up in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But he has no choice. He's in a fallen state. We're physical. It is through the example of the father. My father looks to the father. My father makes no plans. My father's faith is not a religious faith. My father's faith is a very primal faith. Like I say, he grew up in the jungle. So he doesn't philosophize about God. He trusted God. That's how he laughs sometimes. Like, I don't know how the hell I got here.
Yeah.
I don't know what I did. But and he calls him the Almighty. He said, the Almighty just carried my steps. He was just a light unto my feet.
Well, you know what comes to mind too when you say that is that, even if you had a great father, first of all, if you had a father, not everyone does, but then even if you have a father and he was a great father, literally nobody's father is perfect. Everybody's father's made mistakes. Mm-hmm. I've never met a human being in my life who hasn't made a mistake.
Right.
So the example will never be perfect for anybody.
Right.
And a lot of men have bad examples, but some have, decent ones or good ones or great ones. So it's going to come to mind that no matter what example you got, it's going to be flawed.
I work with a lot of young men that have awesome fathers, like in every single way, and they still resent their dads. And it's very unconscious, and there are many different reasons why that may be the case. But I think that's okay because he's gonna die. He's human, like you said. Yep. So when I answered you, the Father, it is literally the God, the eternal pattern, the Father that is flawless. And so we can turn our face and turn our hearts to that which we know is always loving us, always guiding our steps, always forever forgiving, and always, if we can empty ourselves of our ego, which a lot of our, too much thinking or philosophizing or resisting is pure ego. If we can empty ourselves of that, and we spoke earlier about the body being the mind. Yeah. I also say too, if you are struggling, like your question asked, you got to fast. You can't come to God with a full belly. This is one of the East Christian Orthodox things. You got to empty your belly. You got to empty your soul. You've got to purge yourself, and you got to open yourself humbly to be led by the Father, and you will be guided. We're not alone. So if you're struggling right now, it's only because you're not turning to the Father. You're all clogged up, and you're trying to do it on your own with your ego. You've got to purge all that, and then just turn to, like what my father says, the Almighty, and let Him guide you.
Would you say too that you have to get? One of our old speakers used to say, you need to get out of your head and into your body. Is that similar to what you're saying?
Yes, and I've spoken about that a lot, and okay. I've said a lot of wrong things. I've changed my mind on a lot of things.
Same.
Getting into the body can also be very emotional, and we can confuse the sensation of emotion with actually being led. When we're being led, it should feel relaxed. If we're too excited about something, this is it, that kind of feeling, it's too emotional. You got to calm down, you got to stop. Or if it's anger, whatever it is, if it's colored by an emotion, you're in your body, but you're in the dark part of the body. When your body is relaxed, it's logical, but you feel a buzzing, because there's also there's a spectrum too. You can be overly emotional, or you can be schizoid. You can be completely detached. So are these men, and a lot of people, this is where they struggle. They're either the over-feminization of masculinity, or men ends up looking like emotionality. Okay. They're like oceans. And the over-masculinization, the other end of the spectrum, that's way too far also too, is complete dissociation. I don't feel my body. I haven't felt my body in a long time. I don't know what it's like to cry. I don't know what it's like to laugh. I don't know what it's like to have any emotions at all.
It's like robotic.
Right, robotic. Yeah. And that's a scary place too, because, I said that men are a clean slate. Well, you don't want to be so clean that you're only being led by your head, because then you're filled up with facts. And these are guys that live in their head. Yeah. They have no intuition whatsoever. So it's sort of an in-between place.
Yeah, you have a lot of interesting ideas. It's it's fun to see, we're talking about fatherhood, and then like all these other tangential topics get introduced to it.
Yeah.
It reminds me of how diverse your background is. Like people see you as a strong man, like strength camp, but there's like a whole branch of other things going on here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm interested in how this whole thing works. I'm interested in myself.
Yeah.
And in exploring myself, it's just led me down all these different roads.
Yeah. That's been the story of the convention too over the years, and my own history too, is like going through all these speakers, all these topics, all these authors. It's like one thing branches off the next. And to me, it's a good sign of an active mind.
Right.
Like people say, you need to be open-minded, not closed-minded. I disagree. I think you need to be active-minded, in search of the truth, in search of knowledge. And typically that leads people down, like you've gone, I think, comprehensive and diverse paths. So it's fascinating seeing it. It's like you're going from Jesus to Eastern Orthodoxy to fatherhood to patriarchy to the jungle to like, to being in your body and spirituality. It's awesome shit, man.
Yeah, life is like a cornucopia, man.
Yeah.
They used to honor the Renaissance man.
Yeah.
And I think a part of what's brought us to where we are right now in the patriarchy. And, it's very masculine to break things up, chop things up. It's create boundaries and borders. Compartmentalize. We've overdone that in so many different areas, including our self-cultivation, our education. And so you've got people that are specialists, but they're so smart about one thing that they're dumb about everything else.
Yeah.
And, I used to feel bad, they would say that you're a dilettante, just dabbling with I'm not an expert in anything, quite
dabbler.
frankly.
Yeah.
I used to feel bad, what if I were to be an expert? I wish I were an expert and I could be known for one thing.
Yeah.
I realized that, that's not the gift. The gift is to be broad spectrum and to be able to take ideas from a myriad of different areas and turn it into something.
Integrate it.
Because there's so much information available today, I think that the artist and the genius of the future is the one that can take lots of different diverging ideas and then create a brand new, take all the broad palette and create a brand new painting with it.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's what I do with my convention, man. That's like been for years people have called it like a painting that I built or like a framework, and then I painted with speakers, Elliot and Rollo, whoever.
Yep.
Yeah, what's interesting too, what you said with that to me is like what you're saying, I see that as fundamentally different from being a dabbler, which I've heard of that too over the years, self-improvement, especially in the pickup community and the manosphere. Dudes, they dabble with all this like different bullshit.
Right.
And then they get burnt out or bored or whatever they do. But it's like diversity of interests, but with competence and seriousness and genuineness, not just like this light kind of dabbling, like, I'm going to like improve my fitness like 5%, whatever, and all this other little bullshit. I'll learn how to get phone numbers from girls. So I agree with what you're saying, and that's how it strikes me.
Emerson says that the gift is to create not a philosophy, but a living philosophy. So when I quote unquote dabble or I'm looking into all these things, it's not because I want to fill my mind with more ideas so that I can sound cool.
Yeah.
I fill my mind with all these ideas because I see them as pieces that I can use practically in my own life to get a result that I want. And as I take each piece, sometimes I reject them, but as I take each piece and apply them maybe for a season in my life or for a particular problem I'm having, or to heal something, it just goes into the tool belt as something that I can say is, yes, this is good, and I can refer back to it if I'm looking to support or help someone else.
Yeah. Let's shift gears again here a little bit. So, and then this will lead us into something pretty neat for the entire title of this episode.
Yeah, man.
How have you seen fatherhood change in your lifetime? Growing up in the 80s and 90s and the 2000s, you saw it. You saw culture changing, you saw politics changing, you saw all these different things, you saw life changing, the internet coming of age, cell phones. But how have you seen fatherhood change during that time?
I got to be completely honest. When I think about fatherhood, of course, I have my experience with my own father. But then all I can look to is pop culture.
Got it.
Television. And growing up in the 80s, the fathers that had left the biggest imprint on my mind were Al Bundy.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Al Bundy. And, absorbing that, like, I thought Al Bundy was amazing. I was like, he's my hero. Because the show was hilarious.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, his jokes were off the hook. He was amazing. Now that I look back and see the social engineering going on, you know, how much of a fool he was and how weak he really was. You know,
Well, interestingly, he was a strong father compared to what we see now on TV. I mean, that's
I don't know today's media. I've stopped
it's
taking
bad.
it in.
It's that bad.
But I did watch.
Let
me go back because there are a couple movies that I saw. But there was Al Bundy, and you're right. You know, he was strong because he had an opinion and he spoke his opinion, and he created the No Ma'am group. When I told my brother, because we grew up watching Al Bundy, when I told him about MGTOW and Red Pill and that I was into this and it was pretty cool stuff, he was like, sounds like No Ma'am with Al Bundy. So yes, you're right. I do agree with you. But then there was Homer Simpson and Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
Heathcliff Huxtable. Those are the dads that I think of in terms of what imprint was left on my mind outside of my home. How it's changed since then, I don't know. Maybe that's something you could tell me more about because I don't watch too much media anymore.
I try not to watch it either, but I try to stay in tune with like what's going on with it.
Yep.
And I know, for example, too, I was looking at The Simpsons. I was reading an article about it and fatherhood. And basically, at the beginning of The Simpsons, when it first aired, I think in the late 80s or whatever it was, or the early 90s, Homer wasn't quite the buffoon he is now. Like, it was still goofy and stuff, but there was actual, like, almost like morals to each episode. Or there was, like, Homer had a purpose for doing what he did. There was still some redeeming quality to not just to him as an individual or even as a man, but as a father. And that, I think, is what they've tracked in the episodes, is that's like gone. That's been gone for years.
Yeah.
And it was a slow erosion over time. And there's other, the culture's been changing since the late 80s or whenever it started. So that's probably just tracking with the rest of the culture and they're responding to it. But it's interesting to see it then expressed like that or being played out as propaganda even, in a sense, like kind of light propaganda. Then you also saw other, TV shows spring up. I think Modern Family is a good example. I've seen like a few episodes here and there. And the fathers in these episodes, the buffoonery is like, not even just buffoonery. It's not like they're just clowns or something all the time. It's like they're absolutely useless at this point. Whereas, the beginning, say with Homer Simpson, he wasn't quite that bad. There was still something he was doing to for his family.
Right.
Going to the nuclear power plant, fucking something up, but still coming home and loving his kids. So now it's just gotten, Rollo talks about this a lot, that we saw the concept and the hashtag of toxic masculinity just recently, a couple years ago that started, and that's like gone now. Now it's all masculinity is toxic.
Right.
It's no longer even categorized. They've, in a span of 2 years since Trump took office or whatever, it's like everything masculine is toxic. All fatherhood is toxic. I saw actor Terry Crews, the huge black guy, the other day. He's usually super pro-feminist, like all this crap, right?
Yeah.
But he went like on Twitter, like lightly pro-fatherhood. Like obviously it's important, we know that. But the fact that he even dares suggest that, he got like viciously attacked. He apologized for some of it, not all of it, thank God, from what I saw, but a little bit of it. And it's just amazing to see a guy who is a father, who's proud to be a father to some extent, in spite of the feminist crap. And then the second he steps out of line, he just gets like viciously attacked, like little like viruses attacking him. And I think that would not have been the case in the 80s or 90s, not even close.
No.
In 2000s, maybe. So yeah, I grew up mostly in the 90s. I was born late 80s. But I'm just old enough to know like the Al Bundy, like all that stuff. I don't know if you watch Family Matters too.
It was another black family show.
Yeah.
The guy was a cop.
Yeah. Yeah, that one strikes me too, is like you wouldn't see that today.
No.
I didn't watch a lot of the show, but I watched enough of it to where it was like it wasn't like the absolute buffoonery and debasement of fatherhood we see today.
Right.
Which is just rampant. So yeah, I think these are topics too we'll see other speakers speak about at the convention coming up, the Patriarch edition of 21Con. Let's actually focus on that a little bit.
Sure.
What other speakers at the conference are you excited to meet or to see speak? You've so far met Socrates, Hunter Drew, and Rollo Tomasi. And there's more.
Yeah, of course, all three of them, especially knowing them personally, and I think they're great guys. So can't wait. I don't know if is Dr. Sean T. Smith gonna be there.
I just talked to him. Yeah,
really love a lot of his videos. I've been meaning to get the Tactical Guide to Women.
Yeah,
which I imagine just by watching his videos is an amazing book. I have yet to get it, but being one of those books that every young man just needs to put on his shelf.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the guys that I'm familiar with and really looking forward to hearing speak. I didn't realize how much of a wealth of information and experience Socrates was until I got to sit in the car with him on our ride to
he was one of my favorites
shooting.
For sure.
Man, he is awesome. So I can't wait to see what he lays down there.
Yeah. He was actually, I would say he was kind of I don't know if innovator is the word I'm looking for. He was like a precursor to what we're seeing now with the convention.
Yep.
So when he spoke at the convention back in the day, he started speaking in 2011. He spoke in 2012 and 2014 and all that. Mm-hmm. And that was before we got involved with the Red Pill and Rollo and Hunter and all these guys. But he was the only guy back then when we had a bunch of dating coaches speaking and fitness coaches and stuff like that, Mark Sisson. He would be the one guy who would talk about relationships in depth and not just like a light brush. Like his whole talk would be about like, his first one was called, what was it? I can't remember the damn title, but it's like a relationship guide, a contrarian guide to relationships. Mm-hmm. But the contrarian part aside, it was an excellent talk. He just focused on relationships tightly, and this was like really unusual back then. Like the fact that you do this at like what was known, halfway at least at that point as a pickup conference was like super out there.
Yeah.
So he's fit in perfectly to the new speaking lineup we have going on now.
Yeah, like an elder.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great for the young men. I spoke recently about being in the red stage, the hot stage when testosterone comes up and all you want to do is fight and fuck. That's great, and you need support for that.
Yeah.
But not given direction as well as a purpose and a vision for what's possible. And ultimately, that fire cools off. It must cool off.
Yeah.
You're going to be left with what? Yeah. And so when you have guys like Socrates talking about, okay, now that you did all the fighting and fucking, you might want to know how to have a relationship.
You've definitely sat down in the car with Socrates. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
An elder is a really good way to put it. That's exactly what he was. Because these guys were a lot younger than him. He was maybe 45 back then, 44, stuff like mid 40s. Yeah. Most of the speakers back then, some are older, like Mark Sisson, the fitness guys, but most of the relationship or the dating guys and anybody to do with like the pickup community was like late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, maybe late 30s. So he was the elder, and they looked up to him. And even to this day, he's still a leader at the conference. Yep. He's one of our ambassador speakers. It's like another status level for the speakers we have. The three include Socrates, Rollo, and then George Bruno, who you're going to love a lot. George Bruno is someone you got to meet.
Yeah.
I think we talked to you about him a little bit.
I watched a couple of his videos. Yeah. Super fun to watch do his thing on YouTube with his coffee and the stirring thing. Yep. Yeah, I can't wait to meet him.
Yeah, he'll interview you at the conference. He's the current host of the 21 Report, the interview series we have, and he's killed it.
Yeah,
he's a speaker as well, but then he does the interviews, so you'll meet him that way.
Yeah, it's so cool to be opened up to this whole new world of minds and men. So thank you.
I find the best ones I can, man.
Yep, so, you're doing a great job.
Fuck yeah, you're part of it, man. Fuck yeah. So this episode is titled A New Patriarchy. We're talking about like a title before the show, a couple of different options we had, but A New Patriarchy, and I like that too for the same reasons.
Oh yeah.
So when I see my work with the 21 Convention, 21 Studios, as well as the Red Pill and the Manosphere, independent of what I do, I see us as building something new. Yeah. Like looking to the past for answers too. I think that's really important.
Oh yeah.
But also like we can't, like we talked about it explicitly before the show started, you can't just wind the clock back. And even if you did, what would that accomplish? You'd end up right where we're at now.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about where you see or where you want the country to go. Not even the country necessarily, because it's all Western nations really that are under this like fatherhood and masculinity attack. Mm-hmm. But where do you want to see the culture go and socially go in relation to fatherhood? Like where does that need to go? Like a new patriarchy. Like what does that mean to you?
Well, you're right. Turning back the clock and having the old content associated with masculinity and femininity and patriarchy is no longer going to serve us.
Yeah.
One of the things Jesus says is you can't put new wine in an old wineskin. So that's about content and context.
Okay.
So we need new wine, but we can use the old wineskin. Let me put it that way. So I screwed that one up.
Okay.
Trying to use an analogy, but long story short, what I'm trying to say in a cool way is that a lot of the boundaries that have been dissolved over the past 100 to 50 to 100 years, that are really our most important boundaries for existence collectively on this planet, they're the last ones to have gone away, and they're the first ones that are going to need to come back. It's almost like we're going to reverse order. So a lot of the boundaries that no longer are necessary may or may not come back. Well, let me put it this way. I heard it put really well in this old Chinese book I was reading, that if you want a strong, healthy, powerful world, you work within personal boundaries of the individual. We need to know our limits. We need to know our limitations. We need to know what we stand for, what we don't stand for. We have to have personal rules and discipline. All very masculine. These are all very masculine traits. I said before that masculinity is a lot, about creating boundaries. Yeah. Self-boundaries. So the emphasis needs to be on the self and discipline for the individual. Moving outward then becomes discipline between man and community or one another. And so the other, if there's one, the other would be our counterpart, our woman. So the boundary of man and woman has to come back. It's one of the last ones to go because it's ridiculous.
I was just going to say that the boundary thing is really interesting because the very boundary around biological sex, they're trying to erase that now.
Right.
Which is just the most basic one, and it's just fucking crazy.
It's a clear indication that we're at end times.
Yeah.
Like, this is as far as it could possibly go in the most ridiculous and evil way possible.
Yep.
To degrade the most fundamental boundaries of what makes us human beings is what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And to say that there's no difference between men and women, it's almost comical.
In children too, not even just adults, but in children, we see that now. I saw recently there was like a 11-year-old transgender kid or some shit in New York in like a strip club or something, doing some sort of cross-dressing show or something.
And they're glorifying it, they emotionalize it, and they make it so that if you're against that, you're some sort of you're an evil person,
evil racist Nazi.
But that's the most evil thing. I define evil as going against nature. The further you go away from nature, the further your walk from God. Walking the Tao or being in step with God is being in step with nature.
When you say nature, do you mean like trees and like the water? Or you mean like all of reality when you say that?
All of physical reality. Okay. Nature is a mirror reflection of the spiritual reality. We can't see with our natural eyes the spiritual reality, but we know of its existence because of the physical mirror that we live in. And so nature, when we are honoring it and we're walking in step with it and we're letting it be our guidepost, meaning look to nature for the answers.
Yep.
That's another way that a lot of our questions could be answered, like, what should I do? Well, what would nature do? Yeah. When you say, what would God do? That's really tough a lot of times because it's like God is too existential.
There's a supernatural consciousness.
Right. Supernatural. I love that. Natural. When I say nature, there's a natural world and then there's a supernatural world. So if you want to know a lot more about the supernatural world, look to nature.
Yeah.
And in nature, everywhere across the board, there is Adam and Eve. There's male and female.
Yep.
I mean, I can go on too many different tangents, but to come back to your question, personal boundaries, personal discipline, morals, ethics, these are things that can be taught, need to be taught, but at the same time are the core. It's really about the individual. But then the other, and the counterpart of the man is the woman. And so the boundaries that are associated with honoring what it is to be a man, the nature of masculinity, and to honor what it is to be a woman and the nature of femininity. Before you asked me about, what's destroyed the family and the father and what has put men in this weird bind is that women aren't fulfilling their natural role anymore. Birth control pills and easy abortion and women in the marketplace.
No fault divorce, all that stuff.
Don't liberate women. It perverts them from the amazing gift of being a womb man. That's where the woman comes from, womb man. The man that can hold a womb. She, not to say she's a man, but the womb that she can create so that another man or woman can come into the world is the most magnificent human gift in nature.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle. And it has not only been lost, but it's looked down upon. Women keep pushing it because of the birth control pill, the easy divorce and abortion, keep pushing it later and later into life.
Which has really serious risks and consequences for the kid and the mother,
Absolutely. And they're going against nature in that. But then at the same time, they want to have children, so then they have to use, I like to say, or I'm going to say this now, that a lot of our current science is antithesis to nature, meaning that it perverts nature. It's almost like dark science. They're creating babies in petri dishes and shit, which is dark science. Right?
Even psychology, though, even like with the APA ruled, the American Psychological Association, they ruled that like traditional masculinity is basically toxic. Right. Sean Smith's been like railing against that, of course, but that's considered like legit science today, and that's just fucking crazy.
Yeah. Evil science.
Yeah.
It's dark science, So it might be science. Yeah, they're doing it to manipulate nature.
Yeah.
But it doesn't bring us closer to God. Science should bring us closer to God. I truly believe that. I don't think there's a division between science and religion. Science is the study of the natural world.
It should be a search for the truth, and I think that's where scientists today and anything related to that has gone way off the rails in a lot of ways. They're not searching for the truth. They're not searching for reality. They're talking about erasing genders and how that's all, they're trying to legitimize all that crap into like, I think they consider themselves scientists and like truth seekers, but they're not. Like these people with PhDs in gender studies or whatever the fuck they have, it's just crazy. Yeah,
they have they're getting their strings pulled also too by those with the agenda. So there's a lot of fake science.
I've heard it put too that a lot of modern science is like, I forget what they called it, but it's tantamount to what you saw like in the Dark Ages. Yeah, like people just preaching like all this random shit and like, oh, this is totally legit. It's like, no, actually, like there's two sexes, and that's like very, common sense. Like, every day, it should be like a common sense fact. It was when we were growing up,
right?
In the '90s, having to call somebody asking to call them Zer or some other random, 67 genders would have been like the most nonsensical crap.
Right.
It's like, what's happened in just a couple years,
That's why it'll be the easiest one to put back together. That's why I'm so staunch on this right now, because I'm like, all right, we've got as ridiculous as we can. Yeah. And if we want to start putting it back together again, we don't have to go too far, like into the past, like you were saying. We don't need to create the old rules and mental boundaries. The most physical boundaries are the easiest ones to put back together again. And that's why it's like, this is a no-brainer. Yeah, there's man and female. There's male and masculine and feminine. So that one, as we've pushed it to the limit. I don't think the deep dark state can push it any further through their media and propaganda machines. Calling this the new patriarchy and seeing Donald Trump as I really do believe that he's a torchbearer for that.
Oh yeah,
he's a leader in that. Not him per se, but the fact that the American people gave him their thumbs up and will continue to.
We'll put
is saying that our souls are thirsty for a strong masculine patriarch.
And boundaries that come with it, like the wall and stuff.
Yeah, the fact that he wants to build a wall.
A giant boundary.
It's like, that's the, I said that the physical world is an expression of God. It's almost like God saying, you need some boundaries here. You guys are getting crazy. Put up a wall. And it's funny, throughout the Bible, there's so many stories about the walls in the Bible. I think one of the guys, Jeremiah, or some weird Old Testament name. He was called to go to Jerusalem and rebuild the wall. And it was like he was called by God, and it was his whole mission was, we gotta build this wall. I thought it was so like almost like history doing this again.
History repeats itself.
History is a cycle, but I like to think of it as an ascending spiral.
Same.
We're moving up in our consciousness.
It needs to too.
We're getting lighter, but it's repeating itself. Yeah. So Donald Trump, there's this picture of him in Israel, I think, somewhere,
touching the
with
wall,
his hand on the wall. I'm like, that is so poetic in so many different ways with his hand on that wall. and what he represents and what that wall represents.
Taking a step back, I really like what you said about embracing. I interpreted it as embracing your nature as a man or a woman, and I think I completely agree that both men and women today have completely abandoned that.
Yeah.
I think women a little bit harder, but it's really like a minor difference. Like both are completely off the rails right now, and for the most part. And I do see, for example, the manosphere, and particularly the red pill community, and even other elements of it, like the pickup artist community and stuff, teaching men how to be successful with women, or at least succeed with the opposite sex, regardless of the specific goals of it. I see the manosphere overall as teaching men how to embrace their nature, how to be more masculine, genuinely, not this like fake, like apologetic masculinity. Like, oh, I'm a man until you make me apologize on Twitter. Like, no, masculine, I'm going to lead my family. That's why I actually called this event the Patriarch Edition rather than the Fatherhood Edition. I almost called it the Fatherhood Edition, and that was the original title before we launched it. And like a few weeks beforehand, I'm like, wait a second. Fatherhood feels a little bit too specific. That isn't necessarily, that doesn't cover everything. Fatherhood is fatherhood, but it's not like leadership, for example. It's not maybe navigating a divorce for your child, God forbid. So I came across the term, of course, patriarch, and I was like, this is fantastic for like 10 different reasons. It's the ultimate hated word by feminists, but also signifies leadership, more than fatherhood, like we talked about at the beginning. Anybody can go knock a chick up, but to be a strong leader and a father, to embrace your nature as a man, it's powerful stuff.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a father, but I think the word patriarch, especially I love the word roots and, pattern. So there's so much confusion now about so many different things, but about fatherhood, what it is to be a father. Why would you want to be a father? A lot of people don't want to be fathers, and I don't blame them. I understand. But the word patriarchy is so overarching that you can take on and this is amazing, you could take on the characteristics and the values of a father and be a father figure in the world, truly a father figure without having offspring through this idea of patriarchy rather than fatherhood. So that just came to my mind, and I like the way that you said that. It's broad reaching, and that every man who wants to be an elder, every man who sees himself being of value past his fighting and fucking fire stage would benefit himself in the world by learning the ways of the patriarch.
I love the way you put that, the fighting and the fire and the fucking stage of life. I think that's where I've been heading for a couple of years now. We'll see where I end up with that, but I do want to build a family someday. And for example, I almost didn't allow anybody into this conference who wasn't already a father, speaker or attendee even. Staff, I was going to make an exception, but that brings to mind though that I changed that. Rollo was one of the guys who convinced me to do that, that I should let young men into the conference who are aspiring fathers like myself. I was actually asked yesterday, I went on a podcast with Rollo and a few of the other speakers, Steve the Dean Williams and Donovan Sharp. And Donovan actually, the host, asked me, how am I going to build a family? He was a genuine, sincere question too, because it's like fucking hard today. I mean, that's an understatement. It's like, because I couldn't even give him this. I told him, I was like, I don't really have a direct answer for you, because the environment is that much of a feminist hellscape. There's so many dangers and obstacles to doing that. I believe it's possible. Like I see, like you mentioned, history being an upward positive spiral. It's repeating itself in some ways. But yeah, I'm determined to do it. And I guess my question here is, do you have like some basic, maybe top 2 ideas for young men to want to build families, like how to do that today in this like very dangerous environment where you can get, there's so many pitfalls you could fall into today. So.
Yeah. And it kind of brings me back to your question about, where fatherhood's going and stuff like that. And one of the things that I think we've got to establish is to de-establish marriage from the establishment, from the state. And I do believe it's good for us to pair bond. I believe that it's good for a man to be with a woman, a single woman, and to build their lives together in that unit. And we may work backwards, and there may be a time where we go back to tribal units, and maybe it's not as important, but today it is important for a man and woman to be together to raise their family. And so, what was I going to say?
Well, let me kind of throw this in the fire. If you could tell your 21-year-old self, I don't know if you're married by that point, maybe, One or
I
two.
got married 23.
Okay, so if you could tell your 23-year-old self the day you got married, one or two things that you've learned since then, like what would you add to your mind back then? What would you add to your soul back then? Not that you need to undo your past. Like I fully agree with you the way you put that earlier. You are who you are.
Okay. I remember where I was going to go with that, but I'll take the diversion.
Okay.
And I basically said what I needed to say. It needs to be separate from the state, and we need to go back to honoring our own relationships and maybe even bring it back to religion.
Yeah.
But not political religion, true religion. One of the pieces of advice that I would have given myself is to have stopped having sex with what was my girlfriend at the time. So if I was 21 and it was a matter of, okay, now you're going to get married in 2 years, or if that dawned upon me that maybe I want to marry this woman, I would have stopped living with her. I first would have had to believed in my mind that I love her. Okay. Love can't just be, again, emotional, but I would needed to have tested it for myself. And so I think that's a part of the reason why the old school way of dating without sex is important, because it's like, okay, can you love this woman even without the sex? And I haven't had sex with many women, so but I can only imagine that sex is sex. There's been a lot of manipulation in sex that has destroyed it. Yeah. I think pornography has destroyed sex for us, for men, and I think birth control pills has destroyed sex for women. Yeah. The fact that with birth control pills and porn really reduce our libido, reduce our sexual power and our prowess and our sexual instinct. Women who are on birth control pills they're not sexual. They're more emotional. They're emotional in how they choose their partners. They're emotional in the choices they make with their partners.
Changes the way they think too.
Right. Yeah. My wife was on birth control pills growing up, being young. And it wasn't until after we started to have children, because she was after birth control pills, that she started becoming a rock star in bed. Like sex was so much better. She does things and I'm like, wow, when you were 16, you were just laying there like a sack. But now, because she's not on those hormones any longer. So a lot of men who, complain that, that my wife isn't really, or my girlfriend isn't really into it, the way they, especially, I could talk about the way porn destroys our imagination about what sex really is also too. Know that part of the reason why she's probably a sack of potatoes in the bed is because she's on the birth control pill. So it's like, you're having sex so that she doesn't get pregnant, but at the same time, your sex is going to suck because she didn't have it. She can't do it.
She's less responsive and less expressive, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah. And so it perverts sex.
Yeah.
So I would have, the first piece of advice would be no sex. I have so many different logical reasons why I'm standing by that these days. Yeah. But I would said, stop living together. My wife and I basically started living together when we were in high school. Wow. Because her parents didn't have, both her parents and my parents dissolved a lot of boundaries that I will now uphold. And, I'm grateful for the decisions they made because it brought me to the life that I am right now. And I love my life. But her parents didn't care that she was at my house all the time. Yeah. And my parents didn't care that I was 16 years old and locked up in my bedroom with my girlfriend all the time. So we basically started living with one another. I didn't know myself as an unmarried. When I say that married, I mean we were having sex. And I say if you're a young man watching this right now, you're having sex with a girlfriend, I say you're married. You're basically married because now you've got that deep, especially if it's one woman you're with. Yeah. You're married. So I would have said separation from living together. If you're listening to this right now and you're a young man and you're thinking that you love your woman and you're thinking you want to marry her, put it to the test. Yeah. And this is the test that I'm saying. And it comes from religion, which I think is great because what it's going to do is what I spoke about earlier is empty you. It's going to empty you of neediness, of emotional attachment, of the pride.
All the bullshit clouding your judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of false pride that comes with having sex as a man. and you may or may not recognize it, but to have a woman and to be having sex with a woman, there's almost a swagger that comes along with it that clouds your judgment completely.
Walk out of the room like it.
Yeah. Yep. That clouded judgment that made me thought that I was something more than I was, all that needs to be purged, cleansed, so that you can open yourself and actually be led. And by creating that separation, that time away from sex and from physical dependence in your constantly being with one another will give you the space to say, okay, do I really love this woman? It's a scary thing too. And here's another thing that, I discovered, it's in retrospect also too, that a lot of jealousy will come up, a lot of fear. At least I know I had to purge.
Your demons are going to come out.
Huh?
Your demons are going to come out.
All kind of. If you're already attached with a woman, you're already having sex with a woman, and you do what I'm going to say to you right now. Number one, you're strong. You have to be strong. And I don't mean strong. I mean strong in a very manly way, meaning I'm ready to face my demons. I'm ready to do battle with the dragons, because your fears are going to come out. Oh no, what is she going to think? Oh no, is another man going to want to have sex with her? And she's
going to
lose
her?
Am I going to lose her?
Yeah.
All these things. And especially if you stop having sex with her and for her good health, because you love her, get her off of the hormones, get her off of the birth control pills. Wife or woman, I love you. And because I love you, or believe I love you, we're going to create some separation. In that, I would love for you to begin cleansing your body by getting off of the hormones. She's going to be emotional. She's going to get horny. And so not only are you testing yourself and your own resolve and your own strength, you're testing her also too. What kind of woman is this? When she's on the pill and she's attracted, they're very easy when they're on the pill when it comes to their leaning on betas. Their attraction to alphas aren't very strong. That's why there are a lot of like social justice warrior women out there that I see commenting on my YouTube videos that I'm like, you're so filled with excessive female hormones that you have this misplaced maternal instinct that doesn't allow you to see clearly, and you're just leaning on these overly beta male ideas of what a man should be.
I think there's studies on this too, that this is what birth control does consistently to women, is it pushes them towards those nice guys. And the second they get off of it, the behavior changes and the desires change, and leads to cheating and all kinds of shit. This is
and
like really
so if she gets off the pill and she gets horny and she cheats, hey, that is the greatest thing that ever happened to you. Because at least now you know. Before she gets off the pill, here's what could happen. She gets off the pill. She gets pregnant. She doesn't go back on the pill. And now she looks at you and realizes, oh shit. No.
This is a consistent story. In the Red Pill and the Manosphere, we see guys that go through situations and experiences like that. Something else your comments here remind me about is Rollo has an idea he's put out, I think, in his first or second book. I forget where it was at exactly. But he's talked about it repeatedly. And that's that if you want to marry a chick, it's similar to what you're saying, kind of like almost like a self-test. If you want to marry a chick and you're thinking about building a family with a woman, you should absolutely not move in with her because a lot, and Sean Smith talks about this too, because of the sex and all the change that comes with that, and the closeness and all that, the proximity. But you should not move in with her unless you're willing to get married like in 6 months flat, which is super fast, even by today's standards, right? So it reminds me kind of what you're saying, that I see that's like I guess a test that Rollo has, like almost for yourself. And I think he's right. I think you're onto something here too. I think I'll take a lot of heat for that probably, telling guys not to like bang chicks. I'm one to talk.
It'll take heat because they're emotional and they're attached and they're needy and they defend their ideas and their needs and their emotions. Well, so if you're listening to this and you're triggered and you want to judge me, try it. Just test it out. Can you do it? If you can't, that means you're addicted. Don't judge me for your addiction.
What comes to mind too is the level of patience and self-discipline this would require. Never mind the balls to do it, because all kinds of potential consequences to it. Well, consequences of your fears coming out, or your fears about her being expressed. She goes out and gets knocked up with some guy or fucks some other guy. Well, that would be the best thing that could happen to you, but it might not feel like that, and you're gonna feel that temporarily. So this is fantastic stuff, man. Fuck yeah. And this is a message too that is not not often communicated or heard in the manosphere. A little bit from like the tradcon stuff and the more religious guys, which I don't have a problem with.
It's patriarchy, baby.
Yeah, it's patriarchy.
It's the matured red pill or the matured pickup. It's what's next.
Yeah.
You got to know these things.
Yeah. You know, something I thought about too when you're talking about women earlier or anyone having sex before marriage, but I also then split it up into men and women and how they might operate differently. And it's my belief that the way women are behaving now, like 80% of them is like wrong. Like just they're getting a complete, like most women should be acting in a way very similar to what I think you're suggesting. They should be very chaste. They should not be promiscuous. And doing that for women is like a very bad idea. I do think there'd always be a percentage of the population, 10, 20%, they're going to act like pretty promiscuously. They're going to be bad girls. The same way, you know, with men, you have, you know, like 80% betas and like 20% alphas. But I think we've lost that. Like 80% of women now in America, in my experience, are like pretty loose and pretty promiscuous. And that's pretty recent, I think.
We had a place for women like that, and that's when brothels were a thing. That's where this may be a crazy idea, but by legalizing promiscuity, you allow that aspect of the collective shadow to be expressed in its maturity and in its fullness. So to have women that are, let them be the tattooed brothel women. Yeah. And pay them well, tax them, pay them well, and like any other profession, let it go to the free market. Yeah. But you know, we end up now where they're all sluts. They're all, you know, I don't want to say all, but you said 80%. They're all behaving like prostitutes. They've got tattoos all over their bodies. By the time they're 30, I don't know what the average amount of sex a woman has had with a man, but I can't think of a man. Women will always, go for it. Let's be liberated and have as much sex with as many men as you want. I don't know how many men want a woman that has had that much sex. Yeah. I don't know what man is going to rally for that, no matter how feminist you are and how much. Just think about it. You know, there were 57 nuts busted inside your girlfriend or this woman that you want to make your wife, and the woman of your the wife of mother of your children. Yeah. Being that the physical world is the manifestation of the natural world is the manifestation of the supernatural. It's not that they were just physical nuts busted in her. She's taken in the nature of every single one of those men. Yep. And I don't believe that your children are not affected by that.
There's actually science, like legit science, that supports or suggests what you're talking about. I saw it, Rollo posted it to somebody in the Red Pill about a year ago. Yeah. It was a study about flies and how when the female ones, I guess, get inseminated, even if they don't get pregnant, that ends up influencing the DNA of their future children, like whatever little flies in it. So it was posted in the Red Pill because everyone immediately is like, holy shit, these girls that are banging, you know, they'll fuck 75 dudes or 80 dudes by the time they're 30. You know, assuming most of that or all that was raw, birth control or whatever, like what does that mean for your kids? Are they going to have DNA, even if it ends up being your kid, which it might not be? It might have some DNA from other men because of her behaviors. And I agree with what you're saying that the physical world, you know, her actions are a manifestation of who she is and who she's choosing to be over time. And in itself, I don't have a problem with that, except that has consequences. Yeah. And those consequences, like you're saying, are not something I probably want to be involved with if I want to have a mother for my children and build a family, because it's dangerous. The woman will then flip that around and say, well, that's how men act. It's like, well, you're not a man. Right. And I'm not a woman. Like, I don't expect you to act like me, and you shouldn't expect me to act like you, which is, of course, lost now. Everyone's this homogenous NPC at this point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I like the word that you use, chaste and chastity, which is a virtue. Oh, yeah. There's a reason why it was a virtue.
Well, it's hard. Like, it takes effort, it takes discipline. Exactly like you're saying with men, to make these different choices, to not just with sex and women, but also with strength, masculinity, facing your demons. That requires strength. That's fucking hard for men to do, and that's why we become more masculine when we do it. Yeah. For women, I think they become more feminine the more they preserve their femininity, they preserve their chastity. It's, you know, our grandfathers, in the Red Pill, they say that our grandfathers, you know, they were used to women who had 0 prior partners or like 1 or 2 or something. Yeah. Now you'd be lucky. It's like buying a used car for a new car price. So girls now have dozens and dozens of partners really fast. Yeah. And they'll blame guys like me that do it, but the reality is women are choosing to act like this, and they will continue to act like this on their own. Like, I don't cause that behavior, or the guys in the red pill don't cause that behavior. These women are going to act like that, or they're choosing to act like that in spite of all criticism and consequences at this point. A lot of the consequences have been erased, of course, too. They don't feel those anymore, the slut shaming and stuff like that.
I think this tendency towards promiscuity for men is as feminizing as the promiscuity turns women into men. You know, women are going out there having lots of sex, and it's again, you would think of that as a masculine thing, but the easy sex for men as a result of the birth control pill and birth control also too makes us more feminine in that we are very attached to the sensual experience of sex rather than putting it in its right place. So it's all about tasting the broad palette of all the different wines I could have. I like pleasure. This kind of woman, that kind of woman. So you're really attached to that, to the physical. To, you know, I spoke about the word pattern and patriarch coming from and paternity, but being attached to the material world is very much being a mama's boy. And all physical experience, when taken to the degree that you need it or you're very addicted to it, is a very feminine way to be. That's why the religions of old always had ascetics and ascetic practices. You don't go out there and have sex with lots of women because that's not very pattern-like, father-like, God-like. It's very feminine, dark, and that's always, for men in particular, been associated with evil. Not to say that women are evil, but the tendency towards the darkness of earthiness and emotion and sensuality can lead you down a very chaotic road.
Yeah.
Lots of sex with lots of women is chaos.
As opposed to order.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, we call it in the red pill, they call it, I think, the pleasure palace or the pleasure prison or some shit like that. It's loosely similar to what you're talking about, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, this would be a good debate to have at the event. We don't really do debates, but I'm sure these would be hallway conversations guys have. Because these are questions a lot of men have, and they're not just questions, they're challenges in life you have to face, especially right now with things changing so rapidly with technology and feminism and society and culture and politics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, things are changing super rapidly.
And a lot of them are questions that nobody posed before. It was almost, he couldn't ask these questions for the past few decades. You know, a lot of people are upset with, they're calling me out about my interview with Brian Rose on London Real, where I didn't even make an assertion as to whether or not women should vote or not. I didn't say yes or no.
I saw the question.
People are attacking me. I just said, I don't know.
Yeah.
And just by doing that, I left the question mark there. And that alone was taboo.
Yep. That is opposed to
How can I not ask a question? That's when you really know that we're being censored and dumbed down.
Yeah.
When a question causes that much pain.
Well, they're trying to dictate to you how to think, and you're like, no, I'm just going to ask a question and just leave it at that, which I totally support too. And I don't know the answer either to that question, women voting or not. And it's a consistent, issue or debate we have with the Red Man Group and the convention a little bit. My current opinion is that, choices have consequences. Women voting has consequences. Right. Men and women have different biologies and different psychologies. And I think we're seeing that play out with the rise of like socialism in America and things like that over in the deep state over the past like 80, 100 years. All that, the debt. I don't know if you know this, but I think I saw Stefan Molyneux once did like a whole presentation on it. The national debt in America has skyrocketed specifically since women got the vote, which makes a lot of sense with the red pill and Rollo's work and all that, women wanting security and all that. And it's like, well, it's a consequence. And what are we going to do about that? That has eventually that's going to have a big consequence. Debt, eventually has to be paid up and things like that. Trump has some good plans for it, of course, little borders. Yeah. Patriarchy for it.
Yep. The Great White Hope.
Yeah.
That's what Jesse Lee Peterson calls him.
Yeah, Jesse Lee Peterson's great. Yeah.
I love that guy.
Yeah, we got to get him in the convention someday.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, we might even do a black edition of the convention someday with our black speakers. And I think Jesse might come in for that or something like that.
I think that's good now that I've become more red pill aware.
Yeah.
A part of the secularization of society has been this blurring of the line and this. I even believe, I mentioned women's suffrage in the beginning, but the whole so-called civil rights movement, that forced integration, I don't think it's necessary. And I think these things cause more tension than is needed. I think it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay for Muslims to be Muslims and for Christians to be Christians. It's okay for blacks to be blacks and for whites to be whites. It's okay for men to be men and women to be women.
Yeah.
And there was a time when I resisted that. And part of the reason why I resisted it is because I'm multiracial myself. But even being of mixed race, I do see the value of blacks doing black things and being okay, and whites doing white things and being okay, not in a way that keeps us at odds with one another, but in a way that allows our collective strength to increase so that we can do trade with one another. Same thing like with the countries. Now that, globalism wants to destroy all the boundaries between countries, and I know a big part of the reason why is because they want everybody to be like Western capitalism. And it's really, globalism is a capitalistic venture more than anything. It has nothing to do with human rights. It has everything to do with usurping the minds and the hearts and the earning power of more and more people. So really it's a greed thing, it's a power thing.
It's putting everyone under the same thumb of like some sort of communist, like one world government or something like that. Yeah. That's how I see it.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you though on the culture and races having their own distinct cultures and maintaining that over time.
Right.
White people in particular seem to have lost their sense of identity and culture in America and otherwise, and that's unfortunate. And I'm all for you. I think if you're black, you should have your own distinct culture, and you should embrace that and develop that and make it better over time. And same thing with every other part of the culture and religion and stuff like that. Yeah,
imagine the gifts of the blacks in America. In America, you look at I don't want to say the divide, but the contrast between whites, and you get the best of what white people can do, and you get the best of what black people can do. And just imagine if the boundaries were honored and everybody traded fairly. Imagine black people made music in America. Even country music that is really white and bluegrass. I love it. Came from the inspiration of black people. I don't want to say African Americans or African Americans.
A lot of
black
jazz
and white
stuff too, right?
Yeah, it came from blacks. So imagine blacks owned their own music, owned all their own music, and owned all their own sports. Owned all of the things that made them make them great as artists and musicians, and being okay with that, not having to be more like whites, but by taking great care and honor and value in building up the gift of the black. And then the whites doing the same thing, honoring their distinct culture, building up their values, and then through honorable free trade between the two, rather than usurping power and having victim and oppressor
and apologizing for everything. And
White people having to apologize. It's all this tension. Rather than that, I think it would have been amazing to honor the boundaries and play fairly.
I think you had the other day, just a couple of days ago on your Instagram story, you had something, it was related to this, and I liked it a lot. I was like, hit the nail on the head. I forget the exact image I think it was you put up, and it was about diversity and like unity. And I think, I don't know if you agree with this exactly, but I believe that diversity, the way it's modernly projected, it's not a strength, it's like a weakness. But like what you're saying though, if there's unity in like a distinct tribe or culture or group of people, and then are able to freely trade and interact with other cultures, that's very positive. That's like kind of like a secondary diversity almost, or something like that. Was that you that posted that? I think it was you.
Unity in our diversity. There's another page I was following that I reposted it. But I see that as the ultimate. And that's why it's good that Donald Trump is making America great again. A lot of people who are like, well, what about all the other countries? Well, what about them? Let them be great again too. Let Turkey be great again. Let Mexico be great again. Let every country be great again. Let us use our strengths and rise to our potential, and then be fair with one another.
I think he even said something almost exactly like that in one of his UN speeches, maybe like a year ago or something like that. Like, make your country great again.
Yeah.
Something similar to that, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'm all about. Like, if you live in a country that you're not happy with, like, make it better. That's what we're trying to do as hard as we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's something I've been really, I don't know if proud is the right word, but I've been impressed and very happy to see it. Like, you're an influencer, you're a content creator, you're an American, you're a father, you're a patriarch, and you were standing up and making a political stance after, you know, how many years or whatever, with your brand and your personality and your identity and your ability to influence millions of people. I think it's really powerful. More men need to do that. I did that with 21 Studios for my first time with Donald Trump. I endorsed him right before the election, and I lost thousands of subscribers. But I knew that I think like you're doing now, I got the sense that I needed to stand up and finally make an endorsement of something that was very important to me. Whereas I never endorsed, previously I'd endorsed Ron Paul a little bit, but it was very like low key.
Yeah.
I didn't use the company to do it. And in this case, in 2016, late 2016, I did. And I'm really happy to see you do that. And I think more, whatever way they're going to go with it, they need to stand up. Fathers and men and even women need to stand up and speak to what they believe in and make endorsements or take action and give guidance to their fans to the extent that their fans are going to ask them for that. Some leadership like that. Like being a father, I actually like that a lot. You gave me the bio to put on the website, you know, for the Patriarch edition of the 21 convention. And it said like, you know, CEO, father, strong man, all that. And then it was father figure to millions of men. And I do believe that's what you've done to a generation that has grown up with very emasculated fathers or no fathers. And even independent of that, you know, they're surrounded by weakness and anti-masculine, anti-male messages. So you've done that successfully. And I think what you're doing now with being a little bit more political, it's still not the primary thing that you do. It's just part of it. You're standing up for it's almost like you're creating a boundary. And I think that's what has upset your fans, the ones that don't like Trump or they're just whatever, right? You've set up a boundary with your brand now. Like, I endorse Trump. You need to be okay with that or like it, or you need to get the hell out of here or just whatever. So it's been awesome to see that. And I hope more content creators do that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. One of my dad's favorite lines was, "I'm the bad guy, and I don't care if you hate me, but I'm going to do what's right."
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing also too, because men are afraid to not be liked, which is very feminine. Women are more about being liked and being fair, reputation. Men are about doing what's right. And my father risked us not liking him to do the right thing, say the right thing, stand for the right thing, and set the right boundaries. And knowing that it has been my path to be a father figure to millions of men means that I got to do the right thing, say the right thing, put up the right boundaries as a father figure, regardless of if they hate me or not. And it hasn't been until recently that I've been willing and able to carry that banner of being the bad guy. The bad guy that holds the third Hodge twin, right? I see they follow your stuff. They're like, these guys a lot. Yeah, that's right. And it's so funny. We must be related in past lives also too. We look a lot alike. We have a lot of the same fans because we're both in fitness, and to have watched them, I have to say that they were inspirations. And you know, if they get a chance to watch this, that'd be amazing too. Maybe I'll send it. They were inspirations for me in my fitness YouTube channel, creating that. You know, I created my channel, but when they were like, "Hey, dude, if you make a lot of videos and turn on the ads, you'll make a lot of money." And I was like, all right.
Sounds great.
It's worth it. And so I did that, and I was like, wow, thank you. And I modeled, I have to be honest, I modeled a lot of my my delivery based on them. I realized that, wow, they get really close to the camera because they're good-looking guys. And they speak directly to the camera.
They're comedians too, right? And fitness stuff too, though.
So they're delivering, you know, I have a different character than them in a lot of ways. But my delivery is a lot like them. I look a lot like them. So I modeled that. And then when I saw, you know, it took the last few years to do some soul searching, grow my family, you know, I call it being in the tunnel, you know, working on myself. When I started coming back out and I saw them being vocal about their conservative stance, I was like, there go my brothers. All right, good. They gave me just a little bit of courage to say, all right, fuck it. I'm just going to put out Donald Trump content.
Well, I think that's what you're doing. That's really what I see in what you're doing is you're encouraging other content creators who are, you know, fans of yours for so many years or whatever maybe that ends up being Ben Greenfield or other, up and coming YouTubers and stuff. Like they're seeing what you're doing and they're like, all right, Elliot's got the balls to make this decision, to make this call and stand by it in the face of a lot of criticism and all kinds of people getting angry at you. Yeah, standing up like a father would, as a father is in your case. Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yep.
So I had a question, a really specific one I wanted to ask. It's kind of personal. And so we're going to shift gears here out of the political, cultural landscape. How has fatherhood for you and being a father differed with your daughters versus your son in terms of like the gender difference between them?
Well, what you ought to know is that I'm the oldest of mostly boys.
Okay.
So I'm old and mostly boy cousins, growing up in a neighborhood with a lot of boys. I was like the king of the boys.
Okay.
So I knew about being the oldest boy, being the leader of boys. And when I started having children, I had a daughter. Then I had another daughter. And then I had a third daughter. And I'm like, I don't know. And not dating a lot, not knowing much about women besides my wife and my mother and my sister.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about women. So I knew nothing about, and I realized, and I'm just telling my story and being personal, like you say, I projected a lot of my beta characteristics upon how I was raising my daughters in the beginning.
Okay.
They would say, put the pussy on a pedestal, and that has to do with other women, but dads who have daughters, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You put your daughter on a pedestal.
Yeah, too much of the princess kind of character type.
Yeah, maybe put the princess on the pedestal.
Yeah.
Not wanting to hurt their feelings, not wanting to have them say no to them, being beta, being congenial to even my wife. She has no choice. She's a woman. She's going to lean towards a lot of lax, liberal, secular ideas and ideals. And so being overpowered in the home, if you could say, like, okay, this is what the girls want. My wife's okay with it.
It's almost half a dozen of them.
Right?
Bunch, yeah.
And I yielded. I yielded a lot. And so...
and why is that dangerous, or why is that bad as a father?
Because it's like having two mothers.
Okay.
I wasn't being the boundary setter. I wasn't being a father. I was being like one of the children, or like a lesbian in the home.
Okay.
And so when I had my son, and I guess timing is right, I had to go through that experience. I truly believe in order to be of greatest value to my sons in the world, to the young men that follow me, I had to know what it was like to go through that. And I think a lot of them suffer from that just from their childhood. Being king of the boys and staying king of the boys and not having an experience of being a beta, I don't think would have given me the compassion to even come out like I am now in favor for the strong masculine stance that I'm taking.
Okay.
I don't think I could do it because I just wouldn't have the compassion.
Yeah.
I would just be like, what are you, man, a pussy?
Yeah.
Now I get it.
You'll find that almost every single speaker, I think every speaker at this particular conference you're going to speak at, has had the exact same experience. They've done a lot of very alpha strong things, and they've also made a lot of mistakes. Yep. That includes me, that includes Socrates, Rollo, all these guys. They've done, we call it like dumb beta shit, but however you want to characterize it, we make mistakes. And I think through that, though, you learn that compassion, that even that empathy. And that's why, like yesterday on the podcast I was on, someone was like making fun of like all these betas and stuff. I'm like, that's not the only problem. The only men I don't or really don't like are Vichy males, that Rollo calls them, like these absolute traitors. If they're not an absolute traitor to their own sex,
right.
Even if they're beta, even if they're weak, even if they do this, really stupid shit, I've done it.
Right.
And through that, I'm able to empathize with that, and I don't have a problem with them because I know they can change.
Right.
I know they can make better choices. They can learn. They can go to conferences. They can take action. They can do ballsy, risky, or disciplined, actions, discipline, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I like that, the compassion. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, or empathy.
Yeah. Empathy, yeah.
I kind of get the two confused, but knowing how they feel because I've been there. Yeah. And I've become aware of how I was there.
Yep.
And I can look at my blindness. In retrospect, I can, of course, empathy and compassion and say, okay, I don't hate you. I'm not mad at you. I won't judge you or make fun of you. I know where you are.
Yeah.
You're lost.
Yep.
And I won't make any qualms about that. You're not on the right path.
but there's hope for you.
Yeah.
Let me show you.
Yep.
And so now that I have a son, and he's the youngest.
How old is he now?
He's 8.
Okay.
He's the youngest. It's so funny because king of the boys, he's like the prince. And, I mean that he's a mama's boy. He's got older sisters.
Yeah.
His sisters are his example.
Yeah.
He's the youngest. He's the baby.
He's got 3 sisters, right?
He's got 3 older sisters.
Yeah.
He's got a mom that loves him like any mom would, and mommies him, especially because he's the youngest. And so I'm watching him, and I'm like, he's got it. He's gonna have it tough because he's taking on and he carries a lot of female energy. And I'm like, thank God that I am his father.
Yeah.
And that when the time is right, which it's evolving, they go through this stage. All children go through this asexual stage where it's like, boy or girl, it's like some of the traits show themselves. Like he was clearly masculine. I knew he was the minute I never showed him guns or weapons before. He just didn't see them. I have them in my home. He didn't really watch. He was too young to be like watching violent things. First time he saw a gun, a toy gun we were at a dude ranch, horses and stuff, and they were selling fake guns. And a boy had a gun. He didn't know what it was, but all of a sudden he saw a little boy's gun, and he was like a magnet. He's like, "Daddy, what is that shooter?" Daddy, he saw the kid shooting it. "What is that shooter? I want that shooter." And he went over and he was like mesmerized.
He called it a shooter.
A shooter.
Interesting.
Yeah. He didn't know it was a gun.
Yeah,
I didn't have guns. I didn't show him guns. He didn't have toy guns.
He figured it out what it did, though. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, even, of course, it's been my calling to be the man that I am, the father that I am to the millions of men worldwide. But then as my boy is beginning to, around 9 years old, I think they start moving towards the father.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, it's pretty consistent that they're mama's boys until they get like 7, 8, 9 years old.
Yeah, between 7 and 9, correct. That's what I'm starting to experience. Starting to move towards me.
Yeah.
And so it's become really important for me, even more important for me, to really dissolve the beta stuff that I was allowing the woman in my home to kind of weaken me with.
Yeah.
Women will weaken you.
They're pretty good at that, yeah. They're the best.
And be the bad guy in my home now
for
my son.
Yeah.
So that he sees, even if he doesn't understand, he sees, okay, mom and all the sisters have this opinion and they're doing this thing. But dad, it's strange because he's going the other way. Just for me to draw that contrast so my son can see, there's a difference here.
Yeah.
You may even still choose to go with your mom and your sisters now, but there'll come a time when you're going to know that you're not a woman.
Yeah.
And you can't be a woman, and they can't save you.
Yep.
And that, remember what dad was doing, remember what dad was saying, remember how he was different. There's another way for you. It's the right way. And there'll be no question what it is to be a man.
And then he'll rebel. No.
Yeah. I rebelled against my dad being the king of boys, I think partly because I wanted to be the king.
And you were a teenager, 14, 15 or something?
Yeah. I could only imagine that because my life seems to be in so many ways, contrasts my dad. He had 3 boys, I had 3 girls.
Oh, wow.
Youngest was a daughter, youngest is a son. This is wishful thinking. I imagine that there will come a time when he'll naturally push against his mom and the girls and run towards, in the same way I did the opposite, he'll run towards what his dad is doing. And it'll be the coolest shit because I'm out there shooting guns with you guys, and he plays Fortnite and stuff like that. It just comes natural. I'm out there hunting. I'm doing manly stuff. I lift. Always have tough guys coming to my house. I own a gym. So when it comes a time when he wants to create contrast, as every teenager does, it'll be like, dude, I've got the greatest contrast here for you. Let's go shoot some assault rifles and lift.
Fuck yeah. Shark fishing, whatever else we got to do, man.
Yep. And I don't have to one of the things is I realize I don't have to force it. I don't have to make him be anything. but be an option available.
I can imagine that's not only the best way, that's like probably the only effective way to raise a son into an alpha, into a masculine man. He has to choose it for himself.
Yeah.
You force it on him, he'll definitely just lash out. I mean, it's like you've seen that story play out in movies and stories for who knows how long. So I think you're killing it. I think you're in the nail on the head.
I think the relationship between my wife and I also too is very important for him to feel comfortable allowing me to be the alpha father and to be a pattern that he wants to follow. Because if I was living in a home where many fathers and men do, where the woman denigrates the masculinity, I know my mom did. My mom denigrated my dad's alphaness in a lot of different overt and subtle ways.
Yeah.
She says she doesn't like him, and she's to this day, I'm like, Mom, you love every bit of alpha that he is. That's why you're here.
Yep.
But she pushes,
Yeah.
If I had a wife that, let me put it this way, not if I had a different kind of wife, because I have a wife that embraces the way I am, my masculinity, she praises me in front of the children. She plays her feminine role to such a degree that it highlights my masculinity in the home. She supports that, and I'm reiterating myself here.
It sounds like it highlights and colorizes almost, like adds color and brightness to the example that you're setting. That's how I see it. You're setting an example of what a male-female relationship should be like, especially in that particular setting.
Yeah. So he won't, because my wife doesn't resent me as a man. Let me put it that way. A lot of women resent their husbands.
Yeah.
Because my wife doesn't resent me, my son will feel, hopefully, who knows what's going to happen, will feel like, oh, even mom upholds and follows dad the way he is.
Yep.
It's right. Let me go.
Well, I'm willing to bet too that your wife's relationship with you is an example, not an example. It's a reflection of how her relationship with all men. I would be stunned if your wife hated men except you. I'm sure that's the opposite. That she respects masculinity, and you're setting an example of that in expression, and she's embracing it, and then your children are seeing that.
Yeah.
But that's also, I think, going to inform every parent relationship with their children. Is going to inform the children like that's what the world is like or should be like. And so you guys are setting that in the home. It's beautiful. It's awesome. I can't wait to meet her.
Yeah.
I hope you bring her to the convention, Patriarch convention. Yeah.
Yep. Good chance I will. Yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah. You bring the kids too if you want, man.
Good chance I won't.
There's a pool there they would love, but other than that, that's probably for the best.
She likes to be engaged in my work.
Okay. Yeah.
And so she's come to a lot of my grounding camps.
Yeah.
She doesn't come any longer, and she respects that boundary.
Because you exclude all women now, yeah? No, ma'am.
No, but she still is behind the scenes.
Yeah, of course.
So the reason why I say probably not is because we need to bring someone to mind the kids, because she'd want to be there to watch me speak, and she's all about what you guys are doing. Yeah. So she would be 100% wanting to be there to watch all the other speakers. She'd feel like she'd be gypped if she had to, go.
Well, I'll tell you this in the future. Your sons are definitely welcome at the convention. We have 2 or 3 coming to the event right now this year. They're a little bit older than your son, 13, 14, 17. They come with their fathers to the event. And we had a couple last year too. Drew Bay brought his son, for example. Right. His son was like 12 or 13, Luke.
Nice.
So yeah, definitely.
It's a good age.
Yeah, it's a good age. Yeah, 8 is a bit young for our content.
Oh yeah, I mean he wouldn't go unless he could bring his Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. There you go. Well, me and him will play. Me and him will kill it.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that about wraps up what I wanted to get through with this. It's been awesome having you on the show.
Yeah, this has been great, man. One of my favorite interviews ever.
Fuck, damn, hell yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, appreciate that, man. I'm still learning the ropes. I'm usually more the conference, behind the scenes guy, the Wizard of Oz, putting this all together. But sitting down with you, it's been really exciting, and it's been deep, man. Like you have, and that's continually why I'm impressed. Is getting to spend time with you, shooting, fishing, doing all this stuff. Like you have a lot more going on than I realized, and it's been just a fascinating journey to get to know you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So before I forget too, fuck up this part of the interview. Where can people find out more about you? What's the most important thing? Grounded Camp. To find you?
Grounding Camp is very important, because Grounding Camp is my attempt to bring back one of the time-honored traditions that men have always provided for other men. And that is, I use this term lightly and kind of in a joke, but a safe space for men to be men, but not just like you've done with the 21 Convention.
It's a very safe space.
I want to honor you for that also, too, for creating this safe space.
Thank you.
For men to be men and to talk about manly things. But initiation has always been a opportunity for life transition, for death and rebirth, for moving into a new phase of life.
For change.
For change. And change needs context. And that's why the elders and the great initiators always knew that when a young man was reaching that point in his life where change was inevitable, biology sets it in, they would set themselves apart, particularly from society and women, provide some austerity, provide some challenge, and provide some meaning for them to then proceed in the next part of their life. That's what the initiation, rites of passage process is all about. It's not something that just happens at puberty. And I learned that big time between the ages of 36 and 39, my last few years.
Okay.
Life is constantly initiating you. One of the things I say about grounding camp is that I'm not initiating you. It's not that pseudo initiation when you go to college and they whip you with the paddle and make you drink yourself to death.
Yeah.
That's not initiation. That's pseudo initiation. That's a totally different thing. That's a part of the old dying patriarch.
Yeah.
What I'm creating is one of the time-honored traditions of the new patriarch, and that's what grounding camp provides. So whether you're 24, I found is the critical age for many young men where there's this confusion. Not that I chose that. I can see it logically why that's the case now, but I began to see like, why are there all these 24-year-olds around? They're all 24 years old. It happens to be one of those markers psychosocially but then we're getting a lot of guys in their late 30s, 40s, and beyond because it is right for them also too to put down some of the old ways of the past season so that it can refresh. Grounding camp is not about me teaching you what to do in the next phase of your life. It's about let's destroy our old ego, clean the slate, open ourselves up to be led so that your next phase can be revealed to you. And that'll come at 36, 49, so on and so forth. So all are welcome.
And what a better time to do it, go to a camp like that right now in America than right now, with the whole country changing, how fast it is and how extreme things have gotten, but also how positive things look. I could speak for myself and maybe feel the same, that I've never felt this optimistic about the future of my country in my entire life.
Yeah.
I have a president, personally, that I'm proud of every day.
Yep.
More and more so every day, which is even more, what a pleasant surprise every day, or a pleasant gift.
Yep.
But yeah, it's time for change, and I think we're doing that, man.
We're there, man, and we got to be warriors because the forces of evil will fight back, and they're fighting back, and they're losing. If you see all the media battles,
they're screaming.
Every single dead fly that's laying around, starting with the Christine Bailey thing.
Oh yeah,
what a flop. Up until recently, they had the boys that were wearing the MAGA hat.
Yep.
What a flop. The Smollett thing. What a flop. The entire Russian BS where they were trying to go against him. What a flop. They're throwing arrows. They're throwing arrows. They're going to keep throwing arrows. We have to be stronger than them. We are stronger than them.
Yeah.
But we got to speak up. We got to do work like you're doing, 21 Convention.
Thank you.
You got to, if you have a voice, use your voice.
Yeah.
It's not about going back to the old ways. It's not about bringing back the old patriarchy. It's about renewing it in this way, and it begins with being warriors, setting those boundaries, and rebuilding this world.
Damn straight. Build something better, man. I think that's what you're doing. That's what we're doing. I'm excited to work with you at the upcoming convention.
We're doing it and be together in this. That's another thing. I'm so glad to be working with you as another leader, because that's the way of the new patriarchy. It's not competition. Competition is a part of the old patriarchy that is dissolving and dying. We come together, just like nations. America's becoming great again.
Yeah.
Let our individual businesses and sovereignties and gifts that we give to the world become great, and let's work together.
Yeah.
Because that's how we're going to rise.
I call it with the speakers especially. I call it teamwork. It's a very simple concept. You know,
Yeah.
I grew up playing sports, I think, like you. And I see working with so many content creators is just fundamental teamwork. And we're doing that, you know, with organizations and individuals. And that is, I believe, a big part of the future, like you're saying, of a new patriarchy and a masculine future and a better future for this country is teamwork at every level, whether that's like we talked about earlier with different cultures and races, and then also, you know, organizations and businesses like this and, you know, individuals.
Yep.
It's been fucking awesome having you on, man.
You got it,
Appreciate you.
brother.
And I'll have you back here soon in Orlando.
Sounds great.
We'll be, Elliot Hulse will be at the 21 Convention Patriarch Edition.
Yep. Be there.
Hell yeah. That's going on May 3rd to the 5th in Orlando, Florida. You can get tickets on sale now. You could save 25% off getting your ticket now. Tickets are at the21convention.org. That's the21convention.org/patriarch. There's also going to be a link in the description of this video or anywhere else around it, like a card, and you can go and check that out and visit the event and meet everybody at the conference. It is an incredible experience, everything we do with 21 Convention, speakers like Elliot, Rollo Tomasi, myself, Hunter Drew, all these guys. Don't miss it. It is the first time we've ever done an entire convention, an entire weekend, focused on fathers, fatherhood, masculinity, marriage, and family. You need to be there. We do plan to repeat it in the future. We'll see how often it happens. But for right now, this is the one and only Patriarch edition of the 21 Convention this May in Orlando, Florida, and I hope to see you there. I appreciate you tuning in. Elliot, thanks again. It's been awesome having you out. And thank you for everything you're doing, man, and your whole life and with your entire business.
My pleasure.